Hello and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Sarah Lamarquin. Now, if you're a fan of musical theatre, spoiler alert, I most definitely am, then you'll know all about the triple threat. But our guest today really is the epitome of that because she has tripled the strike rate of most performers by starring in 3 once-in-a-lifetime roles across 3 decades. She made her Broadway debut in the musical Rent, earning her a Tony Award nomination. Next, she took on the role of Elphaba, the not-so-wicked after-all witch in Wicked, for which she won a Tony Award. And then she decided it was time to let it go, making musical history as Elsa in the animated hit Frozen. She also guest starred on the TV series Glee, and now she's about to release a dance album, the aptly titled Drama Queen. I am, of course, talking about singer, actor, songwriter, Broadway star and Tony Award winner Idina Menzel. Idina, welcome to Something to Talk About.
Thank you so much. That was a really wonderful introduction. Appreciate that.
Look, as tempted as I am to start our conversation by asking you how many people break out into song with Let It Go whenever they see you, or to ask you if I hopefully did a better job of pronouncing your name than when John Travolta introduced you at the Oscars in 2014. Glad to hear that. I'd actually like to begin by asking you about your dream job as a child, which apparently was to be a tennis player.
Yes, it was some days it was to be a performer and other days it was a tennis player. I'm a lefty who's pretty good ambidextrous, so I had a really good two-handed forehand and backhand like Monica Seles. So I think I really had some talent there, but the world will never get to see it now.
No, we never will, unless somehow your 2 career pivot, and maybe there could be some album cross stage production, cross tennis.
I think I need to give up. I need to give up on the dream. And that's not usually the advice I give to young people that talk to me. But if you ask my friends, they need me to just stop talking about how I could have been a contender.
All right. Well, I think we all know that you definitely are a contender. And of course, you grew up to be the woman soon to release an album called Drama Queen. Before you were a drama queen, Idina, were you a theatre kid?
Okay, good question. No, I was an aspiring little singer. I've been singing ever since I could remember. My parents brought me to Broadway shows. I grew up in Long Island, which is about an hour outside of Manhattan, and I saw Dreamgirls and Annie and Peter Pan, and my life was changed by seeing those shows. And yet a few years later, when I became a teenager, I sort of started to write my own music as well, and had new influences in my life, particularly Aretha Franklin or Billie Holiday or Chaka Khan or Whitney Houston, because I was singing at a lot of weddings and bar mitzvahs in a band. And so then my desired trajectory kind of changed a bit, and I wanted to be a recording artist. And then when I got Rent as my very first professional job, that sort of straddled both sides of the, can you straddle both sides of the coin, honey?
We love a mixed metaphor here on Something to Talk About. You're in a very safe space there.
Both sides of the coin. There are no coins anymore anyway. We don't even have pennies over here. So I'm digressing. Sorry, but you understand what I'm saying. So it's vacillated. The theater kid, the wannabe rock star, the being both at some point, and even now at 52. Wanting to be perceived or seen as a credible dance pop star, even though I'm in this sort of theater box.
Can you take me back to 1996 when you're just discussing Rent there? You made your Broadway debut in the wonderful Jonathan Larson's work. Do you remember, Idina, how you felt when you first stepped out on stage 27 years ago now?
Well, yeah, it depends what stage we're talking about. When we started, it was 1995. We were in a little off-Broadway theater called the New York Theater Workshop down on East 4th Street. And there were about 200 seats in that theater, and we were about to perform for our very first audience. And that morning we found out that he had passed away. So we actually, the audience was canceled, and it was, we all just gathered in the theater. We weren't sure what we were going to do. And then his friends and family showed up, and we actually decided that we were going to sing through the show without costumes, without blocking or movement. And it ended up being a rather cathartic, healing evening in some way, for us, to just sort of stay true to him and sing through his music and make sure that we stayed on that track, because that's what he would have wanted. Then when we moved to Broadway in May of '96, we could tell that things were really, they had a momentum and people were really loving our show, and obviously enough so that we were moved to this Broadway theater. So that was a whole other feeling of standing on stage, and the eruption of the applause, and the very bittersweet emotions that we all had, having accomplished this in our lives, and yet not having this wonderful human being who should have been with us to celebrate and experience it.
Can I ask you, Idina, when we're talking about here, for listeners who aren't familiar with the story, this is the amazing late Jonathan Larson, who wrote Rent, one of the all-time fabulous musicals, really redefined the genre, didn't it, in a way, Idina, that really Hamilton would 20 years later. Can I ask you, working with him, and then, as you say, he passed away just before the production opened off Broadway, and then would open in May '96 on Broadway, one of the biggest successes of its time. What did that experience teach you? Do you think that it shaped you, looking back now, his passing so soon, in how you tackled your career in the industry, and also maybe how you tackled your life?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, one of the themes and messages throughout Rent is No Day But Today, and it's one of my favorite songs. It's a song my character at the time didn't sing it in the show, but every night that I go on stage when I have a concert, I have my own arrangement of it. And I do it every night to remind myself of several things. One, it's a way of saying thank you to Jonathan for seeing me and inviting me into his show and his story and his world, and changing my life. And the other one is to remind myself not to take things for granted, and to try to really live in the present, and to do what I love for a living, to be passionate about it, to make sure that every time I'm on stage that I am really there for the right reasons, that I sing every lyric and every note as it was intended by the people that wrote it. And I think that set a precedent for me and for my friends in that cast, about our work ethic and our discipline and our commitment to the script, and to making sure that we are, like a conduit for the creative people in our lives to help put forth the message that they want to be heard in this world.
No other road, no other way, no day but today.
And then could we move forward to 2003? You originated the role of Elphaba. Idina, to be in the original cast of a show like Rent, that would be the pinnacle of a career that is already considered extremely successful. At what point do you remember realising that Wicked was also going to be a phenomenal success? It's still plays all around the world, it's opening again here in Australia later. I know that you also moved over to the West End to originate the role there. In fact, Helen Dallimore, who played Glinda to your Elphaba, is actually a friend of mine. Like I say, really, for lightning to strike twice, do you recall the moment where you realised that might have been happening again? I'm in the middle of not just a well-received show, but really a phenomenon.
I get asked that question a lot about the phenomenon thing, and usually the answer is no. When you get a job, well, I'll just talk for myself. When I get a job, I'm usually very excited to be working and to be hired. Back in the rent days, I literally needed it to pay my rent. The time between Rent and Wicked was actually about 8 years. And in that time, I got dropped from a record label and rejected on many auditions. And so I needed to sort of climb my way out of obscurity. And so um, uh, when it comes again, it's just a job. You're not focused on this idea that it's going to be some zeitgeist, iconic moment. And all I can speak to is that feeling I had when I heard the music and I decided I wanted to go in and audition for Wicked, and then telling myself, well, if you don't get it, you don't get it, just like I told myself all the time. But for some reason, I left that audition just like in tears because there was something about it that I knew I wanted so badly, and that I identified with this character in such a profound way. And so that's sort of the only clairvoyance that I had.
Too late for second guessing. Too late to go back to sleep. It's time to trust my instincts. Close my eyes and leave. It's time to try to find gravity.
We'll be back in a moment after this short break.
You know that saying, win the morning, win the day? Well, we've got the perfect remedy, and it's so much easier than a workout. Just listen to an episode of the Body and Soul podcast, Extra Healthy-ish, to give you that little bit extra in your day for your mind, body and soul. In Extra Healthy-ish, we cover a wide range of health, fitness, nutrition and wellbeing topics, plus throw in some relationship, beauty and lifestyle episodes too. Search for Extra Healthy-ish wherever you get your podcasts.
I just wanted to ask you, Idina, then about 2009, just after the birth of your son, and you're on maternity leave, and I think, anyone that's had children as a woman knows a particularly vulnerable point in your life. And I've seen you live on stage, and you talked about this anecdote with such vulnerability and humour, where you say you're there with your newborn son, not feeling the most confident, and you get a call.
I think you're being nice. I say it with a lot of sarcasm as well, and a little bitterness. But yes,
Sarcasm,
because
bitterness.
Are you talking about Glee?
Yes, I'm talking about you getting the call to play, Lea Michelle's mother, and you're 15 years older than her. So come on, couldn't they have done like a big sister role here?
Exactly. Yeah. But I think when you're an actor and you get pregnant, you worry you're not going to work again. So I had my son Walker, and then 3 months later I got the call, and so I said yes. But I was still breastfeeding and storing breast milk in refrigerators and little frozen lunch boxes wherever I was, and I couldn't fit into any of the costumes. And then and then when you're worried you're not going to work again, and then people hire you to be someone's mother when you probably should be their older sister. It just wasn't great for the ego, but I sucked it up and sucked myself into my clothes. And was excited to work with Ryan Murphy and be a part of that hit show.
Well, you were fantastic in it, and, got to perform some amazing numbers. You were really in the show at its heyday as well. I actually loved the show at that point. I had just started watching it not long after you made your string of guest appearances. Did you feel that it did sort of bring musical theatre into the living rooms of homes in America and here in Australia, of people that might not necessarily have heard some of those songs or discovered some of that material?
Yeah, I think it gave theater a little street cred. I think people saw the work ethic that is required. I think it put the music in a more contemporary context. I think with social media, there's a lot of different things that were all sort of happening at the same time that I believe changed the climate a little bit for theater to seem more cool, if you will.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I think Hamilton, I think those things have changed the way it's perceived since the time that I was in Rent. Because when I was in Rent, no matter how amazing and raw and rock influenced it was, when I would go and work with other songwriters and producers in the pop rock world, I really had to fight hard to convince them that I wasn't just a Broadway singer. You know, that talent was talent and versatility is a gift, not a curse. And I still feel that there's a little bit of that even today, for whatever reason. I just think that sometimes that happens when you're versatile. People want to put you in a box and make their lives easier as far as how to market you, you know. And so we'll see what happens, but I'm happy. I'm relieved that shows like Glee sort of started to lay the groundwork for that deeper understanding.
It's such an interesting point you make about social media. I listen to Rent all the time, probably at least once a week, the original Broadway cast recording. And I often wonder how that would have played out in a social media world, even the characters. You know, you think sometimes like your character, Maureen, so much of what she did, you can imagine she would be an influencer today if that was existing.
Would. She's an influencer in her own mind, at least. I think, and haven't gotten to Frozen yet, but I do think being someone that has played a character who's green and then an animated character, social media has helped in my world because kids can hear the music and then see the juxtaposition of the real person. Whereas in the past, I think a lot of people who played Disney princesses, people know their voice but never really got to know them. And so that is something that I have benefited from, this idea that people actually can put my work all together into one resume and get to know me in that way.
That's very true. And you're right. We haven't got to Frozen yet. And, of course, that is the triple in the triple threat that I was alluding to. But, you know, The Little Mermaid, obviously, Idina, has just come out as a live action film. And Jodie Benson, who provided the voice of Ariel in the first film, makes a cameo in it. And, of course, being the, you know, musical nerd that I am, I instantly clocked that. It's amazing how many people I've spoken to that didn't notice that or didn't even know the name of Jodie Benson outside of the industry. But of course that was always with Elsa. I really think like your identity was concurrent with hers. So look, let me ask you about Elsa and Frozen, because you really did, if you'll forgive the pun, you defied gravity by coming out with this massive hit yet again in Let It Go. It's a song that needs no introduction. It has made history around the world.
Don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good girl you always had to be. Can still don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore.
Can you tell me about that, Idina? I mean, as you'd obviously, like I say, struck gold twice in very different shows. Defying Gravity also had become a global hit. You'd been on Glee, as we've just talked about. But of course, Frozen, not only are you there on stage performing and for a song that would go on to win at the Oscars, but you also became the absolute icon of every little girl and some little boys around the world. I mean, I've even been known to dress up as Elsa for Halloween. I'm just putting it out there. Don't get scared. It's okay. Didn't bring the costume into the podcast studio with me. How was that moment different from the success that had come prior to that?
It was quite a milestone for me to get the job of being in a Disney movie, being a lead character, and it being a musical. That was enough right there. That was quite the coup and very exciting. I had no idea it would take on the magnitude that it does, and it still does. So that was incredible. The process of being in the studio with my cast and the creative team was was wonderful. I learned so much. But again, like I said, trying to enjoy the process, not the result, understanding that things are fleeting and you never know when something's going to have success and when it doesn't. And then honestly, when it first came out, I was going through a divorce. And so I wasn't focused on it that way. And, I had worked on it for 2-3 years before that because it's a slow process making an animated film. So I didn't see the momentum and the chart topping, if you will, of the song, because I was opening a new musical and going through personal stuff. So it kind of saved me in that way. It gave me something new to sing about, to sing for, to put my energy on. It also made me just feel better about myself, and at a time where I was being hard on myself.
We'll be back in a moment after this short break.
This was an emergency meeting.
We have entered a new era.
They didn't want him to be a prince.
The news can be overwhelming. There's a lot happening at a fast pace and it can be hard to keep up.
That's where we come in.
I'm Andrew Bucklow.
And I'm Bronte Coy.
From the Newsroom is our podcast that will get you up to speed in less than 5 minutes.
From politics to showbiz and everything in between, we'll fill you in on the news you need to know.
Find From the Newsroom on the news.com.au app. Ask your speaker to play From the Newsroom or search for From the Newsroom wherever you get your podcasts.
Lying awake and got lost, running my fingers through my hair. Stay up all night fighting voices uninvited, making me wonder if you care.
There is not a ballad to be found on your upcoming dance project, Drama Queen. The album has what you've described a disco dance vibe. It's a little Donna Summer in part. Can you tell me a little bit about the influences? Was this some of the music? It reminded me a little bit in parts, Idina, of like Olivia Newton-John as well. Was these some of the music that you loved growing up?
Yes. Well, yes. This album I've done the least methodical. I was least methodical about it, and gave myself permission to just be creative and do what I want to do and not worry about what people might expect of me. And I knew that I wanted to do music where people didn't have to be as behaved and as polite when they came to see me in whatever venue that was, and that they would get up and dance and move. I had some of my most favorite shows are 1 a.m. at Heaven in the GAY circuit in London. And that is because nobody's sitting down. They're all pressed up against the stage. We're singing together, laughing, crying, sweating, reminiscing. And I just get off the stage feeling completely invigorated and inspired. And so I wanted to make music that I knew I could take back to those arenas, if you will. And so I went to a friend of mine, Nile Rodgers, and I asked him what he thought of that, and if he thought it would be organic for me or, authentic for me to do that. And he was so supportive, having, done Diana Ross's albums, and just knowing that singers with big, big voices and big melodies are actually really complemented by the dance and the disco vibe. And that was what I was thinking as well. So I got his blessing on that. And I gave myself permission to go down that road, because I also was thinking, well, someone like Barbra Streisand, who is a huge idol of mine growing up, she had a disco phase. Donna Summer, Gloria Gaynor, Cher came around to her dance side and had some of her biggest songs with that. So I feel like big personalities, strong women, it has behooved them to sort of live and dance in this place, and it's paid off. I'm just having the most wonderful time. I'm playing all of these Pride events, and to the greatest audiences. So much love, so much support, and so I'm so excited that I did it.
Your first single, Move, was released in time for Pride Month. Just wanted to ask you about what role the LGBTQIA plus community and fan base has played in shaping your career.
The fact that my singles and the album are all sort of coinciding with Pride has been really serendipitous for me. I, of course, wrote these songs from my own personal experience and themes that I struggle with in my life. But then I realized that a lot of that might resonate with my friends and my family in the queer community. And so being able to perform at all of these Pride events is really, it's an opportunity to express my gratitude, honestly, to my friends and my family in the queer community, those who I know and those who I don't personally know. I really don't think my career would be anywhere without them. I feel like they've been supporting me and embracing my creativity and my artistic choices since day one of my career. And they've inspired me, and I've infused their experience and their energy into all the characters that I've played, mostly characters that are people that have incredible, beautiful power, and are not sure how to unleash it for fear of alienating the people that they love. And once they sort of accept that, makes them who they are, and they do that, then they do, incredible things in the world. And so that sort of parallel, I think, speaks to all of us, but definitely is something that I can share with the community as an ally. And so it's just been so wonderful to stand on the stage with everyone and to acknowledge that this is an outrageous time and an outrageous world, and there's so much cruelty and adversity, but what makes the queer community stand apart is the way that they meet this adversity with love and hope and optimism. And I think we can all stand to learn something from that.
On that note, I will really have to let you go because I know you are a very busy woman, but congratulations on the album, and you can hear Idina Menzel's new album, Drama Queen, which will be released on August 18. Idina, thank you so much for joining me on Something to Talk About today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to meet you in person.
I look forward to that. Hopefully we will see you in Australia touring this album very soon.
Yes, thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the show, make sure you're following us, and we'll be back with another episode in your feed next week.